Today I want to talk to you about unobtrusive miracles, which maybe is an oxymoron. If a miracle is supposed to be something that amazes you or wows you, and if it's unobtrusive, does it really have that wow factor? And yet, sometimes aren't the best miracles the ones we didn't notice at first? The ones that kind of come in under the radar? The problem, I think, is that we get excited by things we've never seen, like multiplying loaves and fishes or turning water into wine, when actually far more fantastic things happen every day. But because they are regular, we call them commonplace, as if that were a bad thing. The author Wendell Berry put it this way: "The miraculous is not extraordinary, but the common mode of existence. It is our daily bread. Whoever really has considered the lilies of the field or the birds of the air and pondered the improbability of their existence in this warm world within the cold and empty stellar distances will hardly balk at the turning of water into wine, which was, after all, a very small miracle. We forget the greater and continuing miracle by which water with soil and sunlight is turned into grapes." Think about what a marvel that is. Water with soil and sunlight turns into grapes, and then from that we make the wine. But the bigger miracle was that it was growing. And yet, because things like that happen every day, we think they're humdrum. There's a cartoon that I saved, pickles. Do you get pickles in your, yeah, okay. Well, it's Pearl and Earl, and Pearl is saying to Earl, who's sitting down reading a magazine or something, "Oh, wow, look at that, Earl. It's a double rainbow. I can't believe it. It's so beautiful. I've heard about double rainbows, but I never actually dreamed I'd actually see one. This is the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me." And Earl says, "I only see one rainbow. Are you sure it's not your bifocals playing tricks on you?" And she says, "Oh, shoot, you're right, never mind." Well, I'd like to alter Earl and Pearl's understanding of miracles a little. And let's start with definitions. My dictionary gives us its first definition of miracle: a surprising and welcome event that is not explicable by natural or scientific laws and is therefore considered to be the work of a divine agency. Now, in this category, you'll find miracles from all over the world and from different religions. For example, consider this Buddhist example in Japan. An image of Maitreya Buddha, that's the Buddha of the future, began appearing on July 4th, 1987, in the bathroom window of the home of Mr. and Mrs. Najima in Nagano City, Japan. Mr. Najima first noticed it when he was taking a bath. He saw Maitreya Buddha standing on a lotus flower, holding a small child with rainbow colors emanating from his body and 2 strings of prayer beads around his neck. And I understand that people still come to visit this miraculous window and to pray. Some, last I checked, it was 20 a day. Some of them claiming to have been healed of their pains and illnesses. Or consider India, where on September 21st, 1995, statues of Hindu gods and goddesses began to drink milk from spoons and cups that had been lifted to their lips. Traffic in Delhi and Bombay was tied up for hours as people came with jugs and saucepans of milk to see the miracle for themselves. Of course, I think it's just when you put milk by a statue, especially if it's wooden, it's going to absorb it, but that's just me. But many believed this was a sign that a new God person had been born to save the world. Or consider the eggplant bought in June of 1996 by Salim and Ruxana Patel. They were Muslims in the city of Bolton, England, and when Mrs. Patel sliced her eggplant in half, she found that the seeds formed the Arabic letters for Ya Allah, meaning God exists. And of course, who hasn't heard of a picture of Jesus in a tortilla in America, or the Blessed Virgin Mary appearing under a Chicago highway overpass, as well as on the floor of an auto parts store. So that's one definition of miracle, something out of the ordinary that might be hard to explain by science and natural causes. But the problem I have with this kind of definition is that it leaves out about 95% of the surprising and welcome events in our lives. The definition of miracle I like better is one based on the origin of the word. Miracle comes from the Latin miraculum, which in turn comes from the verb mirari, meaning to look at with wonder. Miraculum meant something to be wondered at. In fact, our word mirror actually comes from the same word. By this definition, a miracle doesn't have to be counter to science or natural law. It just has to be marveled at, which means miracles depend on you. If you wonder at something, it's a miracle. If you find it unnoteworthy, it isn't. The number of miracles there are, then, may be proportional to the amount of wonder you have. An example of how miracles depend on the person seeing them, consider this example from Rachel Remen in her book, Kitchen Table Wisdom, and Stories That Heal, so lots of good stories in here. And she writes, as a child, I spent many summers alone on a deserted beach on Long Island, gathering shells, digging for little clams, leading a far different life than the city life I led the rest of the year. I have many good memories of that time. Every morning, the sea would wash up new treasures, pieces of wood from sunken boats, bits of glass worn smooth as silk, the occasional jellyfish. Once I even found a pair of glasses with only one lens left in them. Some of the most vivid of these memories concern the beautiful white birds that flew constantly overhead. I remember how their wings would become transparent when they passed between me and the sun. Angel wings. I remember how my heart longed to follow them and how much I wanted wings to fly. Many years later, I had the opportunity to walk the same beach. It was a great disappointment. Bits of seaweed and garbage littered the shoreline, and there were seagulls everywhere, screaming raucously, fighting over the garbage. Disheartened, I drove home and was halfway there before I realized that the gulls were the white birds of my childhood. The beach had not changed. I had. In the Zen form of Buddhism, there's a concept called beginner's mind. And it refers to the way a child might look at the world without judgment and presuppositions, a beginner's mind, and what adults could learn from this. Incidentally, those of you who understand a little Spanish may recognize another evolution of the Latin word mirari. When little kids say, mira, mira, they're saying, look, look, as in wow. Isn't this interesting? Mira, look, wonder, wow. Let me give you just two examples of what I consider an unobtrusive miracle. The first is from Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he talks about what he calls a mini paradigm shift that happened for him on a New York subway. He says, people were sitting quietly, some reading newspapers, some lost in thought, some resting with their eyes closed. It was a calm, peaceful scene. Then suddenly, a man and his children entered the subway car. The children were so loud and rambunctious that instantly the whole climate changed. The man sat down next to me and closed his eyes, apparently oblivious to the situation. The children were yelling back and forth, throwing things, even grabbing people's papers. It was very disturbing, and yet the man sitting next to me did nothing. It was not difficult to feel irritated, says Stephen Covey. I could not believe that he could be so insensitive and to let his children run wild like that and do nothing about it, taking no responsibility at all. It was easy to see that everyone else on the subway felt irritated too. So finally, with what I felt was unusual patience and restraint, I turned to him and said, "Sir, your children are really disturbing a lot of people. I wonder if you couldn't control them a little more." The man lifted his gaze as if to come to consciousness of the situation for the first time, and he said softly, "Oh, you're right. I guess I should do something about it. We just came from the hospital where their mother died about an hour ago, and I don't know what to think, and I guess they don't know how to handle it either." And Covey concludes, "Can you imagine what I felt at that moment? My paradigm shifted. Suddenly I saw things differently, and because I saw them differently, I thought differently, I felt differently, I behaved differently. My irritation vanished. I didn't have to worry about controlling my attitude or behavior. My heart was filled with the man's pain. Feelings of sympathy and compassion flowed freely. 'Your wife just died? Oh, I'm so sorry. Can you tell me about it? Can I do anything to help?' Everything changed in an instant." An unobtrusive miracle. The next one happened to a friend of mine who died several years ago, but was a member of the church I used to serve in Racine. His name was Jerry, and he was once given a book as a little thank you gift for serving on a church committee. We had an intern minister or student minister at the time, and she had a committee of, that would give her advice and give her feedback, and she wanted to thank all the members, so she gave them all, each one, a book. And it was a book of poems called "Sailing Alone Around the Room" by Billy Collins. Now, to be honest, Jerry was a little disappointed in this gift, more than a little disappointed. As he later put it, "Some people don't do windows. I don't read poetry." Well, at least I didn't. I had tried a few times, but never got past reading one or two. However, out of respect for Jody, that was the intern minister, I decided I would give it one more try. That evening, I thought I'd read just one or two poems. But after the first one, I was hooked, and I read into the midnight hours. That first night, I read half of the book, and the next night, I read the rest. I still wanted more. Every bookstore I went to, I looked for Mr. Collins' poems, and I now own and have read more than once all 6 of his books. Now at this point, Jerry wasn't interested in writing poetry. He just liked reading it, and just this particular poet. But a month or so later, on a train trip back from Washington visiting friends, he found himself scrambling for a pencil and paper and started writing poems. "Since then," he said, "poems just keep coming out of me. I never planned to sit down and write one. They just seem to hit me and demand to be let out." As a result, although Jerry had enjoyed being a professional photographer for the previous 25 years, he found a new vehicle to express himself in a way that had never been open to him before. This is the kind of miracle I mean. It doesn't have to contravene nature or scientific laws. It just has to be a surprising and welcome event. And I suspect many of us have had experiences like this. Where we get a gift we didn't want and it turned out to be the gift we really needed. Divinity in a disappointment. Or something sparked an interest in us, maybe kindled a flame in us that we didn't know we had, and for an odd set of circumstances never would have known we had. Magic and a mistake. And there's one other thing I'd like to mention, and that is something I talked to you actually about a month ago, about being obstacles being part of your path. A lot of miracles actually come out of what seem at first to be negative things, even ugly things. Consider the miracle of manna from the Exodus story in the Bible. Now, manna today means an unexpected benefit, but it comes from the book of Exodus, where it says that the Jews, having just crossed the Red Sea and entered the Sinai desert, began to complain of hunger. Would that we had died in the land of Egypt, they complained to Moses. At least there we ate bread to the full, but you brought us out into this wilderness to kill us with hunger. So God sends manna down from heaven every morning and meat every evening. Now, we know what the meat probably was, because Exodus says, in the evening, quails came up and covered the camp. Now, quails fly from the northern European countries every fall to winter in Africa, and then they fly back in the late spring or early summer to escape the African heat. It's a long flight, and many of them land on the Sinai Peninsula exhausted, and that's thus easy to capture. So this might explain the miracle of the meat. But what was the manna? Well, there are a couple of insect species that infest the tamarisk trees of the area. And as they eat the leaves, they excrete a sticky liquid that then falls to the ground where it becomes sort of firm in the cool night air. You've got to pick it up in the morning before the sun melts it, of course, but if you do, it tastes a little like sweet bread. Bedouins who live in the area today still eat it and consider it a delicacy. Incidentally, the technical name for the tamarisk tree in this area is now Tamarix manifera. Fair means to carry or bear, as in ferry boat or transfer, infer, reefer, not that kind of reefer, but so manifera means bearing manna. Now, this is all interesting, of course, as a way of explaining the miracles of Exodus. You know, how did Moses turn the Nile red? Well, it turns red almost every year because of the silt coming down from its source. And how do you explain the plagues of frogs and flies and gnats? Well, they tend to come with the flooding of the Nile, that sort of thing. So that's one way to explain the manna. But there's another way of looking at it that I find a lot more interesting. The manna, this miraculous bread from heaven, is actually the secretion of insects. Or as I heard one religious leader explain it, manna is basically insect poop. Amazing when you think about it. A miracle in the manure. The Buddhists have their own symbol of this, and that's the lotus flower. The Dhammapada says, the lotus flower will grow full of sweet perfume and delight, even on a garbage heap. Transcendence in the trash, grace in the garbage. I have here the Egyptian word for existence. You know, one of the things I do in my semi-retirement is I study languages that I studied once before, and so I can read some Egyptian hieroglyphs. So you can see it looks like a beetle, and you'll find it in, it's probably pronounced Keper. You'll find it in a lot of Egyptian names and pharaohs' cartouches, and in rings and necklaces and amulets. We now call it a scarab because the scientific name for this beetle is Scarabaeus. Is anyone wearing a scarab piece of jewelry? Okay, you haven't. All right. So they call it Scarabaeus, but its everyday name is dung beetle, because it lives off the dung of other animals. Now, why would ancient Egyptians have made a dung beetle a symbol of existence itself? Well, this beetle gathers dung into a ball and lays its eggs in it, and then it rolls the ball up to a safe place and buries it. Later, little baby scarabs come out of the ball of dung, and because the eggs they came from were too small to be noticed, it looked to the Egyptians like the baby beetles just came out of nothing. So for them, the scarab, or Keper, became a symbol of existence and creation. And when Egyptians were buried, these little beetle images were placed all around the body, especially on the heart, to ensure continued existence in the afterlife. Deity in the dung, the holy in the hideous. Now, I would certainly never want to say that all the hellish things that happened to us were planned for our benefit. I don't believe that. But as I look through the rough patches of my own life, I see that some of my greatest insights came out of a lot of crap. And some of the blessings I count today came out of what were only yesterday burdens. There can be magic in the mundane, and triumph in our tears, and even hope in our hurting. Not that we'll always see this at the time, but in a world where miracles happen all around us and are limited only by our ability to notice them, why look for them in only the bright, expected places? Why not see the ones that are so close by we end up tripping over them? The ones that look so much like dirt that we were sure there were no treasures to be found in them, forgetting that treasures are so often buried, aren't they? Don't we usually call it buried treasure? I admit it's kind of hard right now in this country to see these glimmers of hope. In the world we're living today, lies are told boldly and free speech is attacked, and children are kidnapped for leverage against undocumented citizens. But I do see glimmers of hope in brave people who march in 0-degree weather and stand up for democracy, and the people who give rides to immigrants and migrants. And I also see it in the people who protest with me in cities all across the country, including a lot of your youth. The blessings are not always enough to make the burden seem worthwhile, and I doubt I will ever feel that there's a bag of gold under every rock I stumble on. But there's probably more than I've seen so far, and I'm willing to guess there's more to see if I keep looking. If you have, I think we have a few moments that we can take. If you have an example of something that turned out to be a miracle, whether it was intended to or not.
I have something.
Any surprising and welcome events? All right, Sherry's got one.
In high school, she had a, high school Spanish. She had done all the Spanish classes, and you know what that kind of amounts to? So she had the opportunity to be a Rotary student, and so she wound up, the Rotary picked her to go to Argentina for the year. And little did we know when she arrived in Argentina that the government had collapsed, and there was no public school system. And I was ready to bring her back home when she said, no, we have to meet every morning in the classrooms and check in. We still do attendance. And what happened was, from the morning check-in, she wound up hanging out with the other students all day long and establishing friends and speaking Spanish all day long, every day. So when she came home, she was fluent and went on to make her career with a really strong background in Spanish translation. And now she's able to reach out to different organizations and group and work with immigrant people and just Spanish-speaking population in the desert Southwest. So it was kind of a miracle that the schools were closed.
Yep.
I have one when it's available.
My niece had a miracle last weekend when many of us could have used one, right? She and her husband and her, the girlfriend of her son had all gone to Pensacola for a Carroll University baseball game that her son was playing in. And they had to fly home Sunday. And they got as far as Nashville, and their plane was canceled. And they kept trying to put him on another plane, and that one was canceled. It was going on and on. And finally they said, we've got you on a plane, but it only goes to Midway. So her husband quickly rented a car, got online, rented a car in Chicago. And when they got to Midway, and it was quite late, it was probably midnight or so, all the cars were gone. They hadn't saved one for him. So they're standing there trying to figure out what to do. And they say, we have to get to Milwaukee, our cars, there, and this couple nearby said, we heard you say you're going to Milwaukee. Yeah, well, we've got an Uber. Would you like to share it with us? We're going to Milwaukee too. Where do you live? Well, we live in Brookfield. Well, we live in Brookfield. And then they're getting ready to go to the Uber, and they said, by the way, our car's in Mitchell. And the couple that had gotten the Uber said, well, our car's in Mitchell. And when they got there, the cars were in the same parking lot.
Ooh.
It's sort of one of those, what are the chances?
Yeah, yeah,
And I think we have moments like that a lot.
yeah.
Ash would like to share from Zoom.
All right.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. This isn't really what happened to me, but I heard about it and I was like, dang, cool. Basically, in 2010, the Colombian government made a pop song, put it on the radios and stuff. But the reason they did that was because the FARC, which was a militant group, had kidnapped a bunch of their soldiers. Some of them had been over for a decade. And in the pop song, they managed to hide Morse code that said, "We're coming for you. Don't lose hope. 19 have been rescued. Next you." So the FARC didn't know Morse code. So the soldiers that were in the part of the jungle where they were being kept heard the Morse code and obviously gained hope that they were going to be saved. And in 2012, all the people that were in that camp, I think, were indeed saved. So it didn't happen. It didn't happen to me, obviously, but it was just like, that is a more literal thing of like unobstructive miracle.
Right, unobtrusive miracles. Thank
Yeah.
you for that.
The song is called Mejores Dias, if you want to look it up, or Better Days.
Okay.
It's a good song too, besides the whole
Well,
thing.
great. Now that we know that about that would be good fun to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. I have a union minister in St. Paul, Minnesota, named Victoria Safford, wrote a meditation manual called Walking Towards Morning, in which she gave an example of this, miracles in the mundane. She writes, "One afternoon, someone left a strange and beautiful message scotch-taped to the office door. The author didn't even leave a name, though I knew who it was. Her message simply said, 'I forgot to tell you when we met this morning that there are little gold stars all amongst the bittersweet. It's all there, mixed together.'" Now, I had just met with this person who was not quite in crisis, but dancing on the edge, talking and weeping and raging through one of those hard moments that can last for weeks or months or years. It was painful stuff, faced with courage. And here, hours later, was this slightly mysterious, elegant message. And I thought how amazing it is that some people can render even the most desperate experience poetically. And what a gift this is, the making of art out of ashes, and how rare. I was very moved. The next day, there came a second message from the same person on the answering machine, slightly altering my view of things. "Hi, it's me again, calling back about the stars in bittersweet. I forgot to tell you, I stuffed it all in garbage bags, and they're in the closet in the social hall. Those berries sure made an awful mess." Well, Reverend Safford wrote, there's not much poetry in that. As it turns out, there were no metaphors at work at all. Before our appointment that morning, this person had been cleaning up after a church party, for which the decorations had included branches of cut bittersweet from members' autumn gardens and long lengths of tinsel wire to which tiny metal stars were fixed. So it really was all garbage. But, she says, I'm intrigued by conversations and by language that can speak of trash bags, closets, golden stars, and bittersweet, and refer with equal accuracy to the very depths of human hope and suffering, or to the details of committee cleanup. And I know that I am called, as I suspect we all are called, to places where the sacred and the ordinary are all mixed up together, where work is prayer, and prayer is song, and songs are sacraments, and sacraments are silent or spoken brokenly in messages we sometimes barely comprehend, in words we speak in love to one another and to the golden stars. Let us go forth, my friends, and make it so. And now, if you're willing, and with the help of our pop-up choir, we're going to sing a closing hymn. I just need to tell you, we're going to sing two songs actually at the same time. One group is going to do "'Tis a Gift to Be Simple," and the other is going to do "Amazing Grace." The trouble is there's a line missing in the "'Tis a Gift to Be Simple." All right. Okay, yeah, it says "'Tis a gift to be simple," and it's missing "'Tis a gift to be free." All right.